If you're someone like me who's working on putting together a convenient overlanding setup for those extended trips out on the trail, one of the first things you think of is how exactly you're going to transport your food and your drinks. Well, today I've broken that decision down into 3 simple categories to make that 10 times easier. What's up guys, welcome back to Engineering Overland. I'm Tyler and today we're talking overlanding fridges. Now I'm sure we can all agree that the #1 priority for overlanding is food and something to drink. But when you start looking into all your options for how exactly you're going to keep it cool, how you're going to transport it and keep everything good, you quickly realize that there are several different options at several different price points, and then you start to wonder what one is going to be the right one for your setup. What exactly is going to be the best one for you? So today I've broken this down into 3 simple categories to help make that decision a little bit easier. Rather than having everyone filter through millions and millions of results on Google and try and figure out, which brand is going to work, which style is going to work. I've done all of that work for you, and here I have 3 options, and we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each one. First up, we have your very basic cooler, which I'm sure every single one of you guys has one of these. Second, this is a portable 12-volt powered fridge. And last but not least is this overlanding fridge or freezer from BougeRV. And this is battery powered or 12-volt powered, which means you can power this in your vehicle while you're driving, and then overnight run it solely on the battery, and all of your food is going to stay perfectly cold. So we're going to talk about all 3 of these options and look at the pros and cons and figure out which one makes the most sense for you. Since each one of these comes at a different price point, but they all have their trade-offs, I want to go ahead and get into the details. Alright, so first up, let's go ahead and talk about your standard cooler and the pros and cons of buying one of these and using this for overlanding. So to start off, let's just go ahead and talk about price points. So obviously in the order that I listed them is cheapest to most expensive. So your basic cooler is by far going to be your cheapest option, but here's where the trade-offs come. And by spending less money, that also means it has less features. And as you know, a cooler is simply just an insulated box, which means it needs to have something cold inside of it already in order to keep it cold. So with a cooler like this, you always have to make sure you have things replenished with ice. And if you are out on the trail for an extended period of time, you may not have access to running to a store to replenish your cooler with more ice. But then on the other hand, if you are someone that goes out on the trail for maybe just 1 or 2 nights and you have a cooler that has pretty good insulation, you might be able to fill this up with ice and it's going to stay perfectly cold for the entire duration of your trip. And in that case, you're going to save a whole lot of money by getting something like this and just buying ice every now and then when you need it. And believe it or not, when you look at all 3 of these options, these are actually all roughly the same size inside. And as you can see here, this cooler is much smaller than both of these. And that's simply because a frog just hopped across the trail in the middle of the video. And that's simply because it is, like I said, just an insulated box. So you don't have any sort of electronics. You don't have a pump. You don't have anything that is running in order to keep it cold. It is completely self-sufficient based on the ice or whatever cold you put in there. But then one other thing I want to keep in mind when looking at a cooler, like I said, since it only stays cold with the ice and you constantly have to replenish that supply, one thing to think about is every single time you have to get into the cooler, you are letting heat in and letting cold out, which means the more you use it, the more it is going to thaw out and the faster you're going to have to go replenish your ice supply. And that is where you're going to find benefit with having a fridge, because you can get into them as many times as you would like, and since they are powered from your vehicle or from an external supply, every time you open up the fridge, it will be able to pump more cold air into it and cool itself down again no matter how many times you get into it. So those are just a few of the pros and cons of having a standard cooler like this. So with all that being said, there's really not that much else to say about a cooler because it is simply an insulated box. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Alright, so next up in price point is your standard portable 12-volt powered fridge. So let's go ahead and talk about your standard 12-volt portable fridge and weigh the pros and cons of that and see if kind of the middle price point is going to be the best for you and it's worth making the next step beyond your standard cooler. So kind of as I've mentioned already as we were talking about the cooler, is the 12-volt portable fridge is powered within itself, which means you do not have to constantly replenish the supply in order to keep it cold. This runs off from the power from your vehicle. And what makes that really nice is everything is going to stay cold in here as long as your vehicle is running. So anytime you're driving around, you are on a road trip, you are on a trail, your Jeep, your Toyota, your whatever is running, this thing is running. And the nice thing about that is the fact that you don't have to constantly be within range of a gas station or a store in order to go get more ice and replenish your supply, because this is going to keep itself cold. And now your standard portable 12-volt fridge isn't anything that's overly expensive, and it's not super hard to come across. You can probably just run to the store and pick one of these up, but obviously when you start adding in more features, it's going to cost a little bit more than your standard insulated box. So the primary use for a fridge like this is usually for long road trips, because you can transport your food in this and it's going to be running the whole time your vehicle's running. And for a long road trip, that's going to be probably 99% of the time. So this is a great option if you're just doing long road trips. But this video is about overlanding and building an overlanding setup for your rig. So is this a good option if you are trying to build an overlander? So although this does run off from your vehicle's battery, the problem is a lot of us overlanders, we go drive somewhere and then we stop for the night and we camp. And we're going to do that throughout several nights. And the problem there is every time you stop and shut off your vehicle, you're either using the fridge to completely drain your battery, or you have to turn the fridge off and it no longer is cooling your food. And then one thing I have found from my experience with a fridge like this is it doesn't necessarily have the best insulation because of the style of pump that it uses to keep it cold. If we were to look inside this fridge, you can actually see where the air comes in here and then also comes out on the inside of the fridge. And where that becomes a problem is when you stop, you might think that since this is basically a cooler that also has a built-in cooling mechanism, when you shut off your vehicle, you would think your food would stay rather cold. But since this doesn't operate like a normal fridge, as soon as it's not running, you're actually kind of just letting cold air back out through the vent and letting warm air in. So the food tends to warm up rather quickly with something like this, versus when we get into an overlanding style fridge like this that utilizes a standard refrigerator pump, and this is going to have a lot better insulation and be a lot more sealed off from the outside elements. But we're going to go ahead and talk about that in a minute. And because of that pass-through vent on the side here, that obviously is going to make this thing a lot less efficient even while it's running. So now one other thing I want to talk about with a standard portable fridge is it's not necessarily meant for going out on a trail and getting kind of whipped around and hitting bumps, driving over rocks, climbing hills. And the pump that's built into this isn't necessarily meant for that much vibration and that much bouncing around. So that could end up causing some problems for the fans that are built into this over time, and you might have issues with it not running as efficiently or possibly just breaking. But then also on that same note, with all the movement, this is just like a standard cooler in which it only has two handles right here. And when you're carrying something around like this that has that much weight, where that becomes a problem is you want to be able to strap this down. And if you were to strap it down, the only area to do it is if you ran it completely over the lid, which means if you wanted to access this out on the trail, you have to undo all your straps in order to get into it, then shut it and pull all your straps back. And it's just not super convenient in order to put into an overlanding rig and go drive around on the trails a lot. So although a portable 12-volt powered fridge like this is definitely an upgrade over your standard cooler, in which it operates perfectly fine off-grid and you don't have to be within range of being able to go pick up more ice. So that's where this is definitely an upgrade still. But just keep in mind, for trips that you plan on staying overnight, you may need to come up with a better solution in order to keep this cold. So now that we have talked about all of the pros and cons of the middle price point, which is the 12-volt portable fridge. Let's go ahead and move on to the last option and talk about that one. Alright, finally, last but definitely not least is the portable overlanding fridge from BougeRV. This is the BougeRV CR30 Pro, and this is obviously the black version, but you can get these in different colors as well. And let's go ahead and talk about the pros and cons with this, and especially what makes it better than both of these two options, and if it's enough that it is worth the price point. Now, to start off, if you're unfamiliar with this brand, I highly recommend you check out their website, which I will have linked in the description, because not only do they make awesome fridges like this, they make tons of other cool overlanding products, and they plan on coming out with a lot more. So hopefully you guys are going to see more of their products on my channel in the future. So as I've said several times by now, this is powered by a 12-volt supply, but that can either come from your vehicle, or within this there is also a battery. Inside here is a completely separate portable power station, which is super awesome because if you're not using this fridge, this thing completely unplugs and you can use it as a normal power station to charge phones or charge any other thing. You can let this thing cool down the whole time while it's running in your vehicle, and then as soon as you pull over for the night for camping, turn on the battery power supply and keep your food cool throughout the rest of the night and make sure breakfast stays good. So now if we think back to the cons that I talked about with both of these other options, that is where this thing really shines. Like I said, we're talking about building an overlanding setup here. We're not talking about just basic portable coolers. So when you're going overlanding, you want to make sure you're ticking all of the boxes that an overland rig needs. So the big cons with both of these options is, one, this is not self-sufficient, in which you have to supply it with its own ice in order to stay cold. This one is self-sufficient, but only while the vehicle is running. And it also does not have any sort of tie downs, and it has bad insulation for when it is not actually cooling itself. So then move up to this overlanding fridge from BougeRV. It is actually going to tick all of those boxes. So to start off, the first huge benefit you're getting with the BougeRV fridge is, unlike the Coleman fridge, this has a standard refrigerator pump in it, which means everything is sealed off much better. So if you think about at your house, when you lose power, if you don't open up your fridge, your food is likely going to stay good for a few days and be perfectly fine. But something like this that has a clear pass-through vent that is cooling, that is passing cold air into it, if it doesn't have power, it is just letting all that cold air back out. Where looking at the overlanding fridge, this is going to work just like your home refrigerator, and that it is completely sealed off, but it's still getting plenty of cold air rushed into it when it's turned on. And what that also means is this thing is going to be so much more efficient even when it is running. And even better, what is super awesome with this is it has different modes, and you can put this thing down into an eco mode, which means once everything is already fully cold, it will run less and at a lower wattage, which means you can take less draw from your vehicle, or if you're running it overnight, you can put it in eco mode and make sure that this battery supply is going to last you for the rest of the night. The next thing that is super awesome for overlanding specifically is, like I talked about with this other fridge, it's not designed for going over rough terrain and hitting a lot of bumps, and that could potentially damage the electronics that are inside, where this one actually has a lot of cool features built into it that makes it super durable, and the pumps are designed to be able to handle the rough terrain. So this thing is actually capable of withstanding up to a 40-degree incline back and forth, which means it is going to keep running and not want to turn off on you while you're out on the trail. Then on that same note, remember how I talked about having to remove straps in order to get into the fridge every single time? This one, not an issue whatsoever. So if you look on both sides here, it actually has tie downs in 4 separate locations, which means this thing is going to stay super secure, but it is also off to the side, which means you can still get into this fridge perfectly fine. But then at that same point, what's super cool is because this thing is battery powered, if you're someone that sleeps in your rig and you want to be able to make some more room in there, but you now have a fridge and maybe any other overlanding gear, you want to be able to remove this from your vehicle and give yourself room to fit inside. The awesome thing with this, since it is battery powered, you can pull this out and it's actually still going to keep running even though it is not in your vehicle, it is not plugged into anything, which makes this thing the most self-sufficient out of any of the other options because you don't have to replenish it and you don't have to keep it powered at all times. And then if you want to take that even a step further, BougeRV also offers solar panels. You can hook this up, and that battery supply that I was talking about, if you were to be camping during the day and you didn't want your vehicle running, you could have this battery powered supply hooked up to a solar panel and keep everything charged up, which makes it completely self-sustainable. And the last thing I want to get into with the BougeRV overlanding fridge is, like I said at the beginning of this video, this is not only just a fridge, it is also a freezer, which is super, super awesome. You can keep frozen meat, you can have frozen drinks in here, and everything is going to stay super, super cold. And even better yet, if you were to open the lid, take a look at the label right here off to the side, it actually will tell you exactly what temperature you need for any type of food or drink that you keep in here. And it's as simple as hitting the plus and minus button and setting the proper temperature. So now that we've talked about all of the main comparisons between these 3 options, a few more hidden features that I want to talk about with this BougeRV fridge slash freezer. So first up, one of the most obvious features when you first pull this out of the box is it has this really nice LED display here with simple push buttons for all of the controls. Then right next to that we have 4 different size cup holders for a standard cup or a can, as well as a textured tray. Then moving all the way over to the other side, there's also a bottle opener that's included on this, which is just super convenient for limiting how many things you need to carry out on the trail with you. Then if we were to go ahead and open up this fridge, which is actually held down really nicely with a magnetic seal, you're actually going to see that it has this really awesome LED light when you open it up. So if you're sitting out in the dark, you don't necessarily have to have a flashlight on you in order to just be able to find a drink. So go ahead and open up the fridge and it's going to light up for you. Then if you also look in here, it has this really nice divider. So if you want to just keep your food and drink separate, that's just kind of a nice little feature that is included in this. Alright guys, now that we have covered all 3 categories and the pros and cons of each one, what do you guys think? Do you think something like this overlanding fridge is worth the high price point? Or would you rather go back down to something like this standard portable fridge, or even lower yet, and just have a normal cooler? Please go ahead and let me know in the comments if you're someone that goes out overlanding and camps overnight or for long extended trips. Let me know which one you use or which one you would rather have to add to your setup. But just remember, regardless of what you use, get out there, have fun, drive your rig, and enjoy nature, enjoy the trails with friends and family. But I hope this video was at least informational about all of the pros and cons of the different options out there, and hopefully this at least narrows down your search. And again, if you are someone that is interested in getting something like this BougeRV overlanding fridge, I will have this exact fridge linked in my description below, as well as their entire website, so you can check out all of their other awesome overlanding products. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. All right, really quick bonus test that I just did. This has been running for about an hour since I did all the videos. This is running solely on the backup battery that's in here, and it is, oh, you can see it just went to -7 degrees. So this went from 70 degrees Fahrenheit till I turned it on and turned it to the maximum setting, and is now down to -7 degrees off from battery only. And the battery was at 99% when I put it in, so I wanted to check what percentage we are at now, see how much battery it took. Because if you look on this gauge, it looks like it's still full. So I want to see what it looks like if I hit this button, 63%. That's pretty impressive. The fact that I have this on the complete maximum setting, going way colder than you'd ever really need to go, even for frozen food, and running for over an hour now, and it only drained like 30 something percent. That's not bad at all.